Hello and welcome to the Northwest Emo Show. I'm your host, Reece Ritchie. Today we're here joined for a Zoom interview entitled Where the Hell is Bolton with the mighty Blake Crompton. And we're going to be talking through a bit about Bolton's music scene, growing up, moving to Manchester, and a few different things because Blake has knowledge of the entire country's music scene at this point. But do you want to start by kind of introducing yourself a little bit, Blake?
Hello, everybody. My name is Blake Crompton. I am born from Bolton, so immediately I know what suffering feels like. And I've been coming in and out of Manchester for pretty much my entire life. Come from a family of music promoters. Both my parents put gigs on in the Bolton music scene back in the day. And I've been going to gigs for most of my entire life, so I'm quite well versed. Extensive knowledge of the underground scene, which when I talk to people at pubs about, no one ever really knows anything about the majority of bands I have seen or have records of. So I'm very, very honored and very, very pleased to be on here to, rant all this knowledge that is only ever really useful to me.
Brilliant. That's great. But that's what the show's all about. It's all about the underground, and maybe if someone's not experienced it, that would be great. Do you want to mention kind of the musical projects you're in? Rock Music of Canada?
Of course. Well, I've been involved in several musical projects throughout my entire life, and I'm trying to, convince you to get one as soon as the world returns to normal. But currently, I'm the frontman of the musical trio Rock Music Canada, despite none of us being Canadian or particularly playing rock music, and adorning Hawaiian shirts and old beer-stained jeans, which is
It's a great look.
It is a great look. So that's the main project, but I do have my own solo project that I've had since I was about 16 when I was in secondary school and no one wanted to be a band with me because I kept bursting eardrums. Yeah. And been in several other bands with several other colleagues since I was about 11, and occasional electronic projects, occasional guest vocal spots, helped out on bass on several duties, etc., etc. I'm kind of like the odd job person wherever I end up. So
there's a wide variety of skills there. There's a lot of different stuff if you look into Blake and his music, his history. But I would definitely recommend Rock Music of Canada. So to start off, Bolton, how would you summarize it? Like growing up there, what's the music scene like as a whole? Where would you start if someone was moving to Bolton and wanted to get involved?
Well, that's a bit tricky. Well, personally, I haven't actually lived in Bolton in several years, so I don't have a real direct relationship with it anymore. Yeah. But growing up in Bolton, it was definitely interesting. And when I say growing up, I mean literally from like when I was a baby onwards, because again, I was quite fortunate because both my parents, Shelley and Ivan, they did put gigs on in the underground music scene at pubs like the Dog and Partridge, which is now destroyed, and then the Alma, which is, has changed so many hands that it'd be impossible to count. But I was very fortunate because a lot of bands came through, actually stayed with us, and like stayed on couches. So bands like Big Business, which has two members of the Melvins, the Orseys, when they were quite small, they stayed at ours, and now they're huge, and I'm fighting with half the music staff to try and get a gig ticket to that. Loads of underground bands mainly though, from both the American and English music scene. So bands like Clorox Girls, who are an amazing American punk band, Silent Front, who are now disbanded but based in London, and that band have been in so many different other bands, mainly the drummer Gareth Thomas, he's been in USA Nails, Cower, so many different things. So there is a lot of interconnection, and growing up, like these bands came through, they gave the records, they left behind stuff, and I just literally grew up around that. So I definitely had a unique experience with music growing up, like listening to, like literally being on the underground. And other bands like the Get Up Kids, they stayed at our house very much. Like my parents are both family friends of theirs, and it's definitely unique experience. But today, because of various factors, and also I think it's just the nature of all culture, is that it comes and goes in waves. So personally, the Bolton music scene is definitely not what it used to be, mainly because there is really only one venue left. So a lot of the venues shut, times change, music tastes change. Because again, back in the early 2000s, there was like a lot of bands, a lot of more alternative, noisy bands. Even if you want to go the lighting, you've got Jamie T and the Automatic, all those kind of stuff. Your code name is Milo. But around 2006, 2008, after that, the Keystone underground bands like Million Dead and McCluskey, they broke up. The times did change.
Yeah, for sure.
So now there isn't as much currently in the underground Bolton scene, though. You have a lot of really good bands. Like you've got the punk side of it, which my stepfather Danny, he's heavily involved in. So you've got bands like Extract, they're still going. And on the more indie, shiny side of things, you've got a band called Total Victory, who they know me quite well and I know them quite well. So if I had to speak to, if you were going to Bolton, I'd say its main advantage is that you are quite in a good hub. Like, it is a place where you can get to Manchester easily. You can get to Leeds quite easily. It is quite a good networking place to go. But actually in Bolton, there isn't a lot going on anymore. So that's how I would speak to that.
Well, I'm sure you can see there that Blake has like a plethora of knowledge when it comes to different bands. I think he's named like at least a dozen already, just like off the top of the hat, just riffing them off. And I think that must be a really interesting experience as well, as you mentioned, kind of growing up in the underground scene. Because I think you'd assume most people, when they go to underground, it's something they expand into, or they go and explore. They grow up with like pop music or indie or whatever. But to start from underground and learn out must be a really interesting perspective on like other genres as well.
It really was, and at times there is a lot of still exploration. Like, a lot of the stuff that people got into, like, it's been kind of like the reverse. So a lot of people started listening to Biffy Clyro. Like, I know you love Biffy Clyro. I never really heard of Biffy Clyro until I was about 11. Yeah. And by that point, I knew a lot about a lot of different things, and I'd seen a lot of bands at that point. So again, coming from the underground going out, it is quite a different experience. And also I remember my first week at Manchester, at the University of Manchester, you know, when they had those posters with the coin scratchings for places to go. I just watched and went, done that, played there, seen this. Yeah. Everyone thought I was a master's student just because I was telling people where to go.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting experience on the outside looking in. But there are a lot of interesting things that come from it.
Excellent. So you mentioned there's still kind of one surviving venue in Bolton, and I think the closing is something we've seen all across the country, and it's really sad. Do you want to talk a little bit about that venue that's still there, still standing, and maybe mention a couple of the ones that have closed since in a bit more detail?
Of course. All right. Well, the one's still standing. I think they're trying to make some more, like develop some more, but due to the current crisis, I never really.
It's not a good time to start. It's not a good time.
And again, I'm not directly involved with that anymore, so I can't really speak to it. But the one that's standing, I know of, is called the Alma.
Yeah.
And that's quite a good place because it's literally round the corner from the train station. It's a very central position in Bolton. And okay, I can't speak to it, but my parents would definitely tell you about this. That exact same street used to be full of like proper huge nightclubs.
Yeah.
You know, like the rave scene. That like Blackburn's famous for its rave scene as well, but Manchester had a rave scene. Bolton had its own like just like Curry Mile style stretch of rave scenes. But the Alma was on the top end of that. And that was more like the I'd say a shy term. I call it more the metalhead of the venues, because again, you'd have a lot of people in there, a lot like on the walls alone, you'd have a lot of like really cool graffiti, really cool slogans, different things. And the gentleman who has owned it on and off is a lovely man by the name of Jim. And Jim actually works for Manchester Academy. He does the sound for a lot of events. You've probably seen him at Bar 5. I can't remember what it's called now. You know that huge guy with the tattoos under his neck, like absolutely huge guy? That's Jim. Yeah. He's on to the Alma on and off for ages, but he's done sound for Download Fest. He's gone all over. So it's for sound, it's a really, really good venue. And there have been a lot of really good bands that have gone through there. And I've played there a few times, both as a solo act. And actually, I think the last gig I did, Rockman's Canada gig, was a year ago, supporting Extract, which was quite fun. Yeah, in its own way, because it was literally the last moment before the end. Well, not the end, before the closings, as it was called. But it was an interesting experience, and it is a lovely venue. It's very unique. A lot of great bands played there. A lot of my favorite bands have played there. St. Pierre Snake Invasion, I met them there. Cattle played there. Beach Slang.
Nice. Tragic
about what happened with that, but they played there. And the outside stage, and that was actually a pretty funny gig for me. Aerial Salad, who are from Manchester, they supported. But that was a funny gig for me because James, the frontman, he let me borrow his guitar for 2 songs. So it was a funny gig. There have been a lot of good events there in the past, and there have been a few like smaller things been put on. Venues that are no longer with us, there's been a lot. There was a hotel. It's now a hotel. There was a venue, I think it's called Tramways. It was literally like a multi-story thing, but that had a few good metal style gigs on. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But the one I would speak to the most, and this is the one where kind of like my parents fit in the most, is called The Dog and Partridge. It's no longer with us. It's literally being destroyed as we speak after a car rammed into the side of it. But at the same time, it was literally, it was towards the end of its life, in my opinion, because again, there was no gigs being put on there. But there was a lot of that venue that probably had, in my opinion, probably some of the more bands of note. So Get Up Kids played there a bunch of times. There's actually a live recording out there somewhere of it. There used to be festivals put on. I think Big Business played the OC's, a band called Three Diamonds from Newcastle. If you want to hear like the weirdest sounding frontman of all time, who does not put anything on his voice, it's his actual voice. Three Diamonds, just a free piece, incredible instrumental, incredible voice, really catchy songs.
Nice.
But it sounds like something on the Adventure soundtrack. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
But that would be the only other venue I would speak to, because it's the one I know most about in that terms. But again, Bolton directly, it's one of those places. It had its time and place. If you talk to like some of the people there, some people know, like my parents especially, like my mum and Danny and my dad, they would definitely tell you about a place called Hawthorns, which is no longer there. But that was like, how do I put this? It was like the actual nexus of music, because they had DJ nights, they had bands, but it was like the proper hub of music and culture there for a very, very long time. And then it shut down. And after that happened, it kind of, you know how like you're in a place and there is kind of a heart of it. And as soon as that goes, people move on and they migrate. It's just part of life. Things moved on, things developed. I mean, like Manchester's done the same. Leeds music scene over the last 20 years, that has done the same. Yeah. Bristol had a massive rise over the last decade. We've all seen that with Idols and bands like Sugar Horse, St. Pierre Snake Evasion, bands on the fringes of it as well, like John was. That's had its rise, and I think it's still got a good amount of time in the spotlight. But you can, in my opinion, you can kind of see like from the peak of it, it isn't as high anymore. But that's just from my observations of the scene over there. But it's still a great scene to get involved in while you can.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of see these rise and falls across the country, and it all goes round in circles. And Bolton will get its time again, and Manchester will have a boom.
Hopefully, again, cities and small, because Bolton is a town.
Yeah,
it is a huge town. It is the biggest town in the country, but it's still a town. There are limits of that rise and fall, in my opinion. Like cities will have bigger swells, in my opinion. I think Manchester might be on the next one because, you're definitely aware of this, like bands like Slap Rash, Aerial Salad, the Manchester Punk Fest, which is always a huge thing.
Yeah. There's so many exciting bands, Document, all sorts.
Oh, yeah. So many great ones out there. Martin's Broken Neck. You know I've talked about Martin's Broken Neck. I think if COVID didn't hit, I think we'd be seeing it now. But because COVID did hit, it's definitely caused ripples in the thing. But Manchester has a good inbuilt community of both venues, good amount of promoters.
Yeah, for sure.
The family are very, very good. They're very, very connected, very, very reliable professionals.
But
you also have underground professionals as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're looking at checking out underground in Manchester, that's what next week's radio show is going to be about live. We're going to be playing all sorts of Manchester underground. I thought it was a fitting last show of the year. But also check out Grafton Brew Festival. It's been held at the Grafton Arms, which is on Oxford Road in Manchester. Pretty much most of the up and coming bands that I know in Manchester are all playing that festival.
That's where you want to go, because that's where you want to go before a handful of those you'll see in like Loud and Quiet within the next year, I think.
Yeah, 100%. There's big things happening. You've mentioned standout venues in Bolton and kind of the area where you've grown up.
Mm-hmm.
Any standout artists that have kind of made it bigger? I know that you've mentioned so many, but obviously coming from the underground scene, any that have fed in?
Very good question. Now, this is kind of like where my knowledge kind of falls, because I grew up, this is where the whole growing up on the underground kind of differs, because a lot of times with like the old classic punk books and the films, you kind of hear this kind of like, not snobbery, but this kind of like the divide between the underground and the mainstream, the higher level. And there was a time in my life where I kind of observed that, but you grow out of it when you realize music's music and people are going to like what they're going to like. But I mean, probably the key artist I would think of is one everyone knows of. It would be probably Badly Drawn Boy, because he was from Bolton. And everyone, like, if you've seen About a Boy, and most of our mothers have seen About a Boy,
yeah.
and most of our aunts have seen About a Boy, he did the soundtrack. So he was definitely one that was mentioned a lot. But underground wise, there have been a lot of really, really good bands. Like, a good example is, and this is one that I know, Abrasive Wheels. They were a band that started back in the set, like one of the first generation punk bands in like Bolton area, and they ended up supporting a Descendants.
Yeah.
They actually were the main support for Descendants when they played in O2 at Kentish Town a few years back. When I was there, it was a great gig.
Amazing. So kind of to move on from that and move on from Bolton into kind of current music and the things you're doing now, obviously, if you've moved to Manchester, COVID's been a massive thing and music's been a big thing to get us all through it. What music have you maybe found? What's gotten you through lockdown? This whole show started because I discovered a lot of like Midwest emo, like throughout lockdown and a load of those bands. So
I was just sending you loads of Get Up Kids and Reggie in the Full Effect at the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what people have discovered during lockdown, what they found new. What would you recommend and what's got you through?
Good question. Well, if I can just swing back to the whole underground scene, I have been enjoying, because I've had to do a lot of clearing out myself because I'm moving up to Newcastle for a job for a year soon. So when I've been going through a lot of my old stuff and seeing all these like gig mementos, like flyers, tickets, set lists that I've been amassing I've literally got 2 folders. Nice. This big full of stuff and a bunch of cassettes that I got given from the road, and listening to those has brought back some stuff. When lockdown first hit, like when I was still living in Manchester, I found myself gravitating towards a bit more of like the more spacious, still noisy but not as intense, like in your face Converge style noise. Bands like Racket Cannon, who because a lot of bands are breaking up now. They were announcing kind of like a farewell tour before COVID, and then I think COVID's kind of like made them go, let's wait till it's over, then we can do it properly. And while some of us have just faded. Racket Cannon are one of those. They're a very unique band. I think they're from Finland, but I'm not sure. So that's one of them. Hey Colossus, who have released their latest album recently, which is an incredible album, as one track featuring Mark Lanigan, who is just a beautiful treasure of music. So Hey Colossus, Racket Cannon, more like the spacious, echoey. Going back to underground scenes for Leeds, personally, growing up, I found Leeds to probably have the most, I preferred that music scene over all else, because it had like the most, not just the noise, but the art behind the noise, and it has the infrastructure in itself, because you had the Brudenell Social Club, which is a historic venue. That is an amazing venue from top to bottom. I mean, Suede have played there, Shellac have played there, all like the main bands that you think. Yeah. And I also have a weird history, because whenever I went to Live at Leeds, I'd always go to this tiny side stage, watch a band, and then within 6 months later, they were like headlining Leeds, one of the Leeds smaller stages. Rat Boy did it, Spring King did it, like, and then I just realized this jumped up out of nowhere. So it was always fun to do that. But venues like Wharf Chambers, which is a cooperative venue, like literally get a membership and you get free gig tickets. It's really, really interesting there, but that has a good infrastructure. But again, it's been 10 years now, and it's kind of changed. A lot of the band members have gotten older and, living their lives. Like, so like bands like Hookworms that came out of there, they were quite big. And Holodrum, who formed recently. You remember when I was bothering you about Holodrum?
Yeah.
that was a good band. But getting me from lockdown, bands like Blacklisters, who also released their new album last year. One of the members, who is also the frontman of USA Nails, he was in the phenomenal Manchester band, was in the Manchester band Kong and Ocean Size.
Yeah.
Who, if anyone's never heard of like Ocean Size as a Manchester band, that they were probably one of the bigger like underground names, especially back in the 2000s. Like out of all the bands that were coming out of different cities, like Cardiff, you had McCluskey, London, you had Million Dead, Manchester, you had Ocean Size. They were amazing. So in terms of music, those are the kind of things that have been getting me through it. And of course, waiting for the new St. Vincent and Lana Del Rey. That's been a big one. And of course, the new The Armed, which I yelled at you the other day.
Yeah.
But it has been interesting. It has been interesting because as a person who's been doing music for a long time, who thrives off going to venues. Because again, you remember the first few months we met in Manchester. and like have all the people at the Mancunian meetings who was going to like 20 odd gigs at a time.
Yeah. We were always
and then
out.
And then that was ripped away from me.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an adjustment, but I definitely explored a lot more genres, enjoyed a lot more of the atmospheric side of things. Because I don't think it happens intentionally, but there are times where in your life you will find yourself listening to the same 10 bands over and over again, out of both comfort, familiarity, and also just, I call it a bit of just impatience sometimes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm a very specific person when it comes to my music consumption. I mean, I big up Bandcamp more than any other platform because it has the best audio quality, but also the best respect to the artist. But if I want to really absorb a record, I kind of do it a bit like Henry Rollins from Black Flag. I save up some money, I buy the album, and I sit down with my turntable and I just absorb it. Or I'll put it on my speaker as I'm working and I'll passively absorb it for a bit, but then I'll hear something, I'll lock onto it, and then I'll really get into it. For me, though, it's the same thing with a lot of psychology and memory. If you can attach an emotional instance to a thing, you'll remember it forever.
Yeah.
So if music can make an emotional response, which is practically, I think, the reason why everyone loves it so much, why a lot of us are so invested, because it makes us feel things. It makes us invest parts of our soul into it. That's when you know stuff. So I've been enjoying that, rediscovering a lot of that experience over lockdown, because we've had a lot of time to listen to stuff, invest in things. I mean, I know it's not a band, but I remember when the Midnight Gospel came out, which was a year ago yesterday.
Yeah.
That came out at the precise right moment in our lives, I think. And then I found the soundtrack that was written by Joe Wong.
Yeah.
He did that entire thing. I've listened to that at least 30 times. It is a masterpiece of it, but because it's cropped up in certain ways.
Yeah, for sure. Hold on. And we're back. Sorry for that pause there. But I think that's something that's really, really interesting, something really important to talk about. Like, it's so interesting to listen to how you listen to music and how you absorb it, because everyone accepts these mediums in different ways. Everyone listens to music in a different way. Like, even on the most basic level, some people listen to albums, some people listen to playlists on shuffle, some people listen to the radio. But like actually absorbing it in different ways is incredibly interesting to talk about. And it's really interesting to hear from someone that's so passionate about music as you, because most people wouldn't go into that kind of depth. They just say, oh, I listen to music, but you have a process in your mind and you kind of actively understand what you're listening to and how you're doing to it. But the final kind of question that I wanted to talk about and what I wanted to end on is kind of where you are at now. The big thing for both of us has been moving to Manchester for university. And I know you're going to Newcastle soon, so you'll be moving again for your placement year. But what's the difference been like moving to Manchester, and what have you learned? Because I know you've had a foundation in music your entire life, but have you learned anything new, anything interesting from coming to the big city and starting to explore gigs there?
It's a good question, that. My first reaction is I have definitely learned a lot about myself, a lot about how I interact and how I fit in places, and also how I am as an individual in music. Because again, I've been coming in and out of Manchester since I was like 6 years old. So I know the city like the back of my hand. I have seen it change so much from when V-Revs, which is now the vegan junk food shop. I remember when that first opened in 2012 as a black metal record shop, and I bought my first record, Rites of Spring Discord reissue, and Send More Paramedics on it. Send More Paramedics, another Bolton band actually, who dressed up like zombies and did like zombie metal soundtracks.
Excellent.
Check those out if you need a Halloween playlist. But in terms of like the big city, I don't feel like I moved that much because I've been going in and out of it my entire life. So it felt more like I was just moving to a different side of town in my brain. Yeah. So there wasn't a great deal of that, but again, I've been going to gigs for a long time, but I've always been going with someone, either with my mom or with my dad. And this was like the first time I was going to gigs by myself. Yeah. Interacting with people by myself, because also as a person with high functioning autism, I have certain blind spots to social behavior. I'm not aware of how I come across all the time. Like, I remember when I first met you, I kind of like was quite high impact in energy, but that's just because it's just what I do. Yeah. But the thing I enjoyed about when I first moved to Manchester and like where I'm at now since then, because I've had to move back home to Lower Darwin. Yeah. since the pandemic started. So I've been, again, very disconnected, very on the outside looking in for stuff and looking at a lot of Instagrams, a lot of live streams and really enjoying it. But it's not the same as being there, actually being there and looking at the buildings and seeing how it changes, even though the city is sleeping.
Yeah.
Well, it's opening back up again, but like groggy, hungover, waking up again. But it's definitely been an experience. It's definitely taught me a lot about myself and a lot about how people are, but also like how things are different than they used to be, like in my opinion. Because again, I've been in this kind of world for a long time. And again, I can never say this without making it feel like I sound arrogant, because I don't like coming across arrogant. But again, I have had a very specific upbringing.
Yeah.
I know a lot about very specific bands. I know a lot about very specific experiences. I know how to promote gigs. I know how to get stuff sorted in that way because I've grown up around it. So when I talk to people in Manchester, when I talk to people who have been actually living there for a good few years, and I mention all these things and they just look at me like, huh? It really makes me aware of both how blessed I was to have that upbringing, but also how I'd say a bit isolating it can be. Because again, it feels like I've definitely come from another planet, despite I've been coming in and out of the same city all my life. So it's been definitely a unique experience, but I've definitely got used to it. I've been letting a lot of things surprise me more. That's probably the big thing. I've been letting a lot of things surprise me. And after my placement year, I intend to come back to Manchester, both to finish my studies, but also both members of Rock Music Canada will now be in college there. So I will find the promoters.
Nice.
I will resurrect them like Ozzy coming out of his coffin, and I will get stuff done.
Yeah.
While finishing my degree, of course.
Excellent. But I think that's another interesting thing to touch on. Like, it's different enjoying music and living it. Like, having your parents be promoters, being in the industry is a different experience than just enjoying it, and it interacts with the way that you listen to music and the way that you live. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. If you
pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. If you haven't, you should definitely check out Rock Music of Canada. And I'm sure we can get a few bands from Blake that I'll post on Instagram that are your go-to, a few of his recommendations that we can post on the radio show's Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, for you to go and explore if you're interested in anything he's talking about.
Yeah. Do you want me to do kind of like one band from each area of the country kind of thing, or how would you want me to do it?
We'll do a Bolton section and then just like Blake's top 5. These are the underground bands that'll blow your mind. Something like that. We'll figure it out all afterwards, but we'll make sure to get some stuff on socials that Blake can recommend, because I've listened to a lot of bands that Blake's recommended and have always enjoyed them. But thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All of our links are on there. Our other YouTube videos, make sure you check them out. There's stuff with Gamma Girl, Geo Blue, all sorts of people.
Thanks for bringing up Gamma Girl again, because let's face it, Alice is great at what she does.
Yeah,
but on my personal note, also check out Reece's SoundCloud, because Reece has stuff out there. He won't mention it because he's a modest person, but he has stuff out there that people should put on little mixtapes and give to lovers on, special dates like August, just the month of August.
There's a few different old mixes that I did when I was like 16 that might resurface one day again. But thank you so much, man.
They do.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next time.